As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in and making this your podcast and radio show of choice. Sorry for a few of those misfires right there. But if you could, let me pull up the chat window. As always, for those who are watching live, just give me the heads up on how that audio sounds, minus making notes of those misfires there. Sorry, it was muted. But that being said, thank you all for tuning in and joining me on this, I guess, special Halloween episode, even though we're not doing anything special for the holidays, for the holiday even. No ghost stories, no nothing like that, although I wanted to do that and decided to just do a update show on what happened in October, and I figured that that really should be the aim of all of these types of shows here on the monthly update show, followed by an Ask Me Anything. Now, some of you even wrote in when I said that all of the updates were going to be followed by an AMA. And then, of course, I got the, wait, what's an AMA? Who's AMA, you know? So for those who don't know, AMA stands for an Ask Me Anything episode. And essentially it means just that you can ask me whatever you want. It could be on anything, any topic, any issue, you name it. I'll field it and answer it if I can. So it's just kind of a lot of fun. But what I wanted to add into this particular episode of Inside the Black Vault is ultimately just an overview of some of the stuff you may or may not have seen on the Black Vault this month. And then, of course, dive a little bit deeper than I would normally do on, my Twitter posts or Facebook posts or however you guys keep in touch with the Black Vault. A quick reminder, if you are not subscribed on Twitter or Facebook or any of those social networking, please do so. It helps a lot, but it also helps you guys keep in touch with exactly what's going on, what I'm working on, the documents that have been released. And October was a pretty exciting month. Not quite as exciting as September, but it was exciting nonetheless. Now, to go over a couple things, obviously this is not just a UFO topic show. Some of you have asked quite a few questions about some of the other issues and topics that I've posted about here in the last couple of weeks. So I thought that that might be really kind of a good way to start. And of course, I've got some visuals for you guys to try and help make sense of all of this. And so towards the end of this part, and again, I'm going to try and keep it as short and condensed as I can, because I know I could be a little long-winded. We will go ahead and open up the toll-free line. That way you guys can ask whatever you guys want. Text messages as well are always welcome. I know not everybody likes to call in. The last couple of episodes, text messages are a lot more popular. So let me go ahead and start this just kind of more of the, again, update show. I'm going to try and watch that chat as much as I can. And I see there's a couple of people talking. So I'm going to try and watch that chat as much as I can, guys. For those, if this is your first time, when I put those text numbers up or the toll free, priority goes to that because that's the easiest for me to watch. The chat gets incredibly difficult as the show goes on. It gets a little bit busy, so there's a lot of people going back and forth. It's near impossible. For those who do decide to use the super chat feature, I do appreciate that in advance, and I will definitely try and watch out for those. On the off chance I miss it, I'll apologize in advance because I got a couple monitors here that I'm watching. So that being said, let me go ahead and just kind of jump in here on some of the things that you may or may not have seen on the Black Vault. Some of these topics, one of which is actually one on a personal note that I have been into for quite some time. It's actually, and I don't know why, I have an emotional attachment to the story, to understand exactly what happened on August 12th of 2000. Now, for those who don't know, the public story of what is going on with the sinking of the Kursk or the K-141, this was a Russian submarine that went down. The public story was that it was a torpedo explosion, in fact, multiple explosions, and that is something that ultimately can be believed when it comes to the Russian Navy, the failing budgets, the lack of care. Why I got so attached to this is I had Freedom of Information Act requests into the Department of Defense while those while those sailors, were on the ocean floor. They were still alive. And they were actually alive for a couple of days, and they were trying to communicate with Morse code. It was such a human story that I feel was largely overlooked at the time. But why I had FOIA requests in at the time was that I had definitely been researching near misses, primarily during the Cold War. However, they happened well after, and there are documented incidents that you can get through the FOIA of the Navy interactions, the U.S. Navy, I should say, interactions with the Russian Navy, and how a lot of the incidents actually involved in small collisions. There's one that I can think of off the top of my head where the hulls of the two submarines, it was a Russian sub and an American sub, came so close to each other because they were playing cat and mouse games that they both turned at the very last minute. They wanted to see who would turn last, and they would literally scrape hulls. And so when I heard the sinking of the Kursk, I was curious if there was an incident. And I remember at the time, and I've been trying to dig up some of the headlines, but there was a lot of rumors that an American ship was in the vicinity on a top secret mission. What that was, we don't know. It's still considered classified. But they haven't really released any information on this. And as time went on, I realized that there is a huge cover-up about the cover-up of the Kursk. And history proves that a collision was absolutely possible. Now, of course, people are going to argue Russian propaganda and they just blame everyone but themselves. That's fine. But actually, history does support that something like that can definitely happen. This was a recent, just posted this month. I did get it in September, but for those who do watch me on social networking, you'll realize I've got a ton of material. And the National Security Agency back in 2000, I believe it was 2014, I believe it was, when I first started receiving responses, that they were hiding material about the sinking of the Kursk. So I waited quite a few more years after that in hopes that with the passage of time that they would actually declassify something. This came in just last month, and it shows that whatever is going on about the Kursk, they are considering those documents top secret and secret. They confirm that they have them. And what I was looking for was records about the sinking, records about any potential collision, this and that. So they say there's documents there, but they consider them secret and top secret. So here we are. I can't believe it's nearly 20 years after the sinking of the Kursk, and they are still highly classifying everything involved. Now, I get it's submarine positions and all that. That's rightfully classified. I don't argue that. However, there's generally something that can be released and there's not. So keep that for those that are watching government secrets, cover-ups, and stuff like that. I think that is definitely a cover-up that we don't hear enough about, and it's something that definitely has a human element. All of those sailors did die on the bottom of the sea. There was no rescue. They had reports that they saw dents and a crushed front end of their hull, which of course was dismissed as more propaganda. So it's kind of hard to figure out what to believe and how to make sense of everything. But that is definitely one to keep an eye on. Another one I posted about seems to have a lot of political connections. This obviously for whatever side of the aisle that you sat on. If you're on the left side of the aisle here in America, this, of course, was a quote-unquote Fox News, conspiracy and this and that. If you're on the right side of the aisle, Hillary Clinton was to blame, so on and so forth. So for me, I go after all government secrets. And also to me, and this is a personal opinion, out of everything that I've ever investigated and researched and looked into, honestly, the attack in Benghazi on 9/11 in 2012 is one of the biggest cover-ups that, in my opinion, is actually provable. There are multiple angles to this story that the U.S. government has wanted to essentially sweep under the carpet. Now, of course, there was a politicized movement about Benghazi, and I'm not into that, despite what some people think. I get attacked from the left side of the aisle, the right side of the aisle, you name it, they'll come after me and call me names, which, never makes you feel good, but in a way makes you feel good because you're getting attacked by both sides. So you know that you're approaching everything and you're just going after the facts. It shows that whatever was going on in Benghazi, and for those who don't know, they attacked the American consulate there. The ambassador, Chris Stevens, was killed. 3 other CIA operatives who were trying to essentially rescue him were killed. We know that there was a CIA outpost there. That was not as well known, if known at all, before 9/11, 2012. But they're still obviously covering it up. There's something going on. This also was posted this month. I did get it back in August. Again, very sorely behind. I'm trying to catch up with all this stuff. I've got reams and piles of material on the printed front. Check out Twitter. The handle is BlackVaultCom if you're not subscribed. And check some of the pictures that I posted. I just showed some of the recent paper material that I have yet to scan. And however, the electronic files is literally about 20 times that. You'll actually notice a small stack of what appear to be CD cases in the front. Those are CD cases. Just that small stack in the front of that picture represents, I estimate, about 25,000 pages of material that were given to me by the FBI that I have yet to put online. So sit tight, guys. There's a lot of stuff coming. But back to the Benghazi real quick, just so you guys know that the cover-up really does continue on this. Back in 2014, ironically, same as the NSA response before, got this response that they were withholding an unknown number of pages that I was seeking on foreknowledge that the Benghazi consulate was going to be attacked, or that region was potentially threatened by an attack. That was kind of the conspiracy theory. So that's why I honed in on those specifics, not necessarily records on the attack, not records, about the aftermath or the change in security, but rather, did we know it's coming? And the CIA is still classifying 100% of it. They will not release anything. Now, again, arguably, maybe it is that CIA outpost and what they're doing. I saw very quickly in the chat, somebody said gun running. I've heard that, and that is a possibility, that this was obviously a black program or something like that, where they're running guns through the CIA consulate. And that's not fine, but I mean, I can accept that answer. But it is something that needs to come out. So it seems like there's, with Benghazi, there's just a lot of stuff that the U.S. military, the government, they just don't want you to know about, and definitely covering it up. So here we are 7 years after. My math's not as good off the top of my head like that. But 7 years later here from Benghazi, we still don't have answers. And it's largely just disappeared, in my opinion, not only on, the Fox News channel, which arguably was the one that covered it the most, but no one really talks about it anymore. And this is why I love to stay on top of these things, because a government secret on something that you may not be interested in, and maybe something that you just don't care about. Like some of you may go, God, why is he talking about Benghazi? It shows you the lengths that they can go to cover things up. And that's what I learned in a very early age when I started doing this, because I had only dealt with the UFO topic when I was like 15. Partially it was boredom, but the other part of waiting, by the way, boredom of waiting for responses. But the other part was I wanted to see what other cover-ups there might be. And it lends credence to the whole cover-up potential behind all these topics. And again, that topic that we're talking about now may not be relevant to your interest, but it's the fact that they can cover it up. And it's the fact that the media just makes it go away. Maybe they just don't care anymore. Maybe the news cycle's over. Maybe they did want to politicize it as well. Regardless, it really shows what can happen with these topics, and it really helps you understand others. At least that's what I think. And so way back when I was that teenager waiting for UFO stuff, I started tackling everything. And it was for that reason. Because again, I was getting information on cover-ups and stuff like that really sometimes wasn't even an interest to me. But it showed me the lengths and the games that they would play to cover it up. And it made a lot of then the other stories that I were interested in or was interested in a lot more plausible. And so that's why I kind of go after that evidence. If you're not familiar with this is actually pretty interesting. It's one that I had just learned about a couple of years ago, that there was a rash of puzzles. I guess there's only about 3 of them that were tied to a group or a mysterious entity known as Cicada 3301. And these were, I'll go over just so you guys are aware of this, because this is Sid Vitch. I really appreciate that support. Thank you. I I appreciate that for specifically research on the Kursk. I will definitely put that towards researching the Kursk. Please write me a private email. I'll keep you updated on what's going on with the Kursk, because I actually have appealed those answers. And so, yes, I will show you exactly what I'm doing with that. And I'll go ahead and definitely keep everyone updated. But make sure you write me directly and let me know your contact information, because I'll let you know what's going on with the Kursk. So back to the Cicada 3301. So it was actually kind of cool. There were 3 puzzles. The first one appeared on January 4th, 2012 on a website called 4chan. Now, the kids love that site. I don't use it that much, but it's obviously very, very popular. I believe that's where Q started, if you're familiar with that whole conspiracy. And so it had been posted on it, and the puzzle ran for about a month. The second round, what they called it, was a year later, January 4th, 2013. And what they called a third round, a clue was posted on Twitter January 4th, 2014. Now, what's interesting to me is that there was speculation this was a recruiting tool, that it was either put on by the NSA, the CIA, or Britain's MI6, or the Freemasons. Was it a hacker group, and that they were looking for the best of the best out there to crack these puzzles? Well, the CIA and NSA part was the one that intrigued me, because I wouldn't put it past them. So I started filing FOIA requests a couple years ago to try and figure out, what was there some kind of intelligence background to all of this. CIA said that they had no files on Cicada 3301, but the NSA finally, in the last couple of weeks, did respond, and they sent me their files on it, and they were keeping tabs on what was going on, but zero indication that they actually played a role. So nothing earth-shattering news-wise there, but just very cool that these types of puzzles, if you're not aware of them, start popping up randomly in different parts of the internet. And even though it may or may not one day come out that it was an NSA or CIA recruiting tool, I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that. So I feel, if for those of you who, not to age myself, I still think they do it. I'm not familiar, but I took an ASVAB test, and the ASVAB test was in high school. So going back, god awful number of years ago. But the ASVAB test, I got a call, wasn't from a normal recruiter. I never really told this story, but I got a call from the U.S. Navy. And this was back in, I guess it would be 1999, the year that I graduated, based on the ASVAB score. That's not a pat on the back. My point is that they saw the score and the Navy reached out. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's just a recruiting tool. But apparently it was on the coding part of ASVAB, and they are watching those types of testing standards. I know it's put on by the military, but they're watching those for, who can code and uncode and decode and figure out puzzles and stuff like that. So it was actually kind of a cool feeling. I never got a call back from that. It wasn't like a recruitment thing. It was a congratulatory call, which was very interesting. So these types of tests, they mean something to the U.S. military. It's very interesting. Stephen Padilla, thank you so much for that donation in the super chat. Very, very much appreciated. Moving on, this was a really interesting one. Now we're getting closer to what I'm guessing some of you are actually interested in, which is the OSAP and UFO programs and this and that. And this was kind of a very interesting connection that ties back to, I don't know if I've ever talked about it on this show before, but something that I'll bring up and go over again so you guys are aware of it. And it all stems from a document that I had in my archive and actually didn't even know or realize it when I got it at the time, quite a few years ago, that it was authored by Dr. Eric Davis. Now, this was a study on ball lightning. The Air Force Research Lab, or the AFRL, had contracted Dr. Davis and his company Warp Drive Metrics to do a study on ball lightning. Now, ball lightning obviously connects to the UFO phenomena a lot, simply because that was a go-to explanation back during the Project Blue Book years. Even today, some people report UFOs and determined to be ball lightning and all that good stuff. So it was just kind of an intriguing report. And then I re-stumbled on it going through my site because I was cleaning some stuff up. I was like, wow, that was by Dr. Eric Davis. Now, why is he important? Well, he's the one that authored quite a few of the, I call them the DIRD reports, which are the reports that were generated under the OSAP contract. Now, I'll get into OSAP in a little bit, but obviously this all ties into the Pentagon UFO study that we've been that have largely been talked about in the media and during the last year and a half to 2 years. And so Dr. Davis was one of the authors of, I believe, 5 studies, and I'll go over those in a little bit. But I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. And so this was the cover page for it, for those taking notes. That was the contract number. This is the contract number at the top. Quite a few reports were actually generated under this contract number, and not all of them were by Dr. Eric Davis. Now, if you're putting 2 and 2 together, yes, I'm going after that contract. Of course I am, trying to figure out exactly how much money went to whom and who it went to. Now, this was back in 2003 when this particular report was done. So this was, before the OSAP/ATIP programs. So he's been around for a long time doing these types of grants and contracts and stuff like that where he gets money to make these reports. These are those 38 reports that were made under that Pentagon UFO study known as ATIP is the more popular name, or OSAP, which is kind of the origin name. Very controversial right now on are they the same program? Why do I say that? Well, all you got to do is listen to the Stars Academy, and they both have 2 of their board members have differing definitions on if ATIP was an actual program or if it was a nickname for OSAP. They actually don't agree on that. So it's kind of a confusing thing. They both worked on it. That would be Mr. Luis Elizondo and Dr. Hal Puthoff, and they describe the program in 2 wildly different ways. I point that out just simply because if I seem like I can't tell you guys a definitive answer, that's why there is no definitive answer on if OSAP is ATIP or if they are 2 different things. Regardless, we do know that John McCain had written the Defense Intelligence Agency asking for all ATIP reports, and he was given this list of 38. Now, we know that 5 of them were authored by Dr. Eric Davis. I went ahead and listed all 38, highlighted the ones that Dr. Eric Davis was contracted to do. Now, one thing that I found very interesting about OSAP, and again, that's that rumored quote-unquote UFO program, I'll tell you in a minute why I use air quotes, is a little bit of history. Remember when I've said in the past on this program that history often repeats itself. Now, I floated this idea quite a few months ago. This was on Twitter, but also a more lengthy post on theblackvault.com. But also, I believe, on Reddit, I posted it as well. Generated quite a few responses, if memory serves. And it was a project back in 1972 called Project Outgrowth. Now, this is really interesting, simply because this was the report that I dug up. It was by the Air Force Rocket Propulsion Laboratory, headed by Franklin Meade. This is from the document itself. A study was conducted by an ad hoc group within the Air Force Rocket Propulsion Laboratory during the calendar year of 1970 in an attempt to predict the major propulsion developments that may occur in the next 30 to 40 years. This report evaluates the future of conventional chemical rocketry based on thermodynamic principles and revolutionary conceptual approaches to system applications. Plain English, it was a forward-looking program into 30 to 40 years into the future, and they honed in on what advancements in rocketry could there be. I'll juxtapose that with what we know as OSAP. Now, this is from you can still access this on the Federal Business Opportunities website, or fbo.gov. And OSAP stood for Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program. Yes, that's a mouthful. This is still viewable. This is not an archived version. You can still go download it. This was public. There was nothing secretive about it. Their objective, as outlined in the actual bid solicitation, one aspect of the future threat environment involves advanced aerospace weapon system applications. The objective of this program is to understand the physics and engineering of these applications as they apply to the foreign threat out to the far term, i.e. from now through the year 2050. Now, this was 2008. Okay, so 2050, you're talking 42 years. And so that is nearly an identical objective, but instead of propulsion, it's looking at weapon systems. Here is the requirements. The contractor shall complete advanced aerospace weapon systems advanced aerospace weapon system technical studies in the following areas: lift, propulsion, control, power generation, spatial temporal translation, materials, configuration, structure, signature reduction, optical, infrared, radio frequency, acoustic. Number 9, human interface. 10, human effects. 11, armament. 12, other peripheral areas in support. I do not see anything about the paranormal in that, nor do I see anything on UFOs. Some people are out there arguing that OSAP was all about the paranormal in Skinwalker Ranch. I'll let you guys decide on whether or not the official documentation even starts to lend credence to that. But that being said, the OSAP contract went to Bass. That's a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace. They were the only bidder. That also is confirmed from the Defense Intelligence Agency. So how this leaped to a cryptozoological program on Skinwalker Ranch, as some have claimed, I'm not real sure. But this was really very kind of close to Project Outgrowth. Project Outgrowth, back to that 70s program, got into the propulsion system using the human mind and psychokinesis. Really kind of like crazy fringe stuff. Very much like OSAP. If you look at those 38 reports, they got into warp drives, faster than light travel, this, that, and the other thing. Project Outgrowth, harnessing theoretical faster than light particles. It was very, very on the same tune. I mean, it's not identical, but it's along the same tune. So I thought, that's a pretty interesting connection. By the way, 1972 to 2008, you're talking about 36 years into the future. Remember, 30 to 40 years was Project Outgrowth. OSAP, coincidentally, posted 36 years later. So is there a connection? Who knows? Why is this interesting? Well, you got to look at the people involved. Remember I said Franklin B. Meade was the one that chaired that? And he was the program manager. He wrote the report and everything. That was 1972. Check who was the program manager on that ball lightning study by Dr. Eric Davis. Yes, the same guy. Pretty interesting that decades have gone by, and Franklin Meade, who was the program manager or the author, the main guy on the Project Outgrowth study, just so happens to be the program or project manager for Eric Davis's ball lightning study. Except that wasn't the only connection. This one, Review of Laser Lightcraft Propulsion System, was another report made in 2007, right before the OSAP contract. So it's not connected to that program, but authored by Eric Davis and Franklin Meade. So even in 2007, they were working hand in hand on these types of issues. And laser lightcraft, the same as what this was about in 2007, showed up as the same topic as report number 31 in the OSAP reports. Now, why is that important? Because it's been reported that there was $22 million that was spent on the OSAP/ATIP contract. Now, ironically, Dr. Hal Puthoff, remember I told you there's a discrepancy on his description versus Luis Elizondo? Dr. Hal Puthoff 100% aligns with the Pentagon stance, which is it is the same program. There is a statement that says ATIP is OSAP. It's the same thing, maybe renamed or, whatever. But regardless, it's the same thing. So Hal Puthoff agrees with the Pentagon there. It's further supported by that John McCain letter, by the way. John McCain was asking, what did ATIP produce? Give me everything that program produced. The DIA sent him 38 reports made under OSAP. So that as well supports it was the same program. So kind of a question mark on why Mr. Luis Elizondo is kind of the odd man out, saying ATIP was a different program entirely. And yes, all of those facts actually matter to those interested in not only the truth, but also trying to fact check a lot of this stuff, because there is a big difference between a program nickname and a program. And so that's where kind of the problem aligns. So $22 million bought these 38 reports. At this point, we don't know what else was there. There's rumored to be a 490-page report. I asked the DIA about it, and they said that they had no information on that, meaning, it's not quite a denial, but he's not giving me any indication that he even knows what I'm talking about. That was from, I believe, the New York Times article back in 2017. So my question is, what did the $22 million buy? Here's why. If you start researching all of those different reports, many of those reports authored by various scientists, including Dr. Eric Davis, all have very similar articles already in the public domain, some of which were published before OSAP, some of which have the same title, some of which may even be the same report. So how much were they paying all of these scientists to do these reports? You're talking about $22 million at least. That, again, if you trust the media, who knows anymore? But let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that $22 million is accurate. So $22 million bought a bunch of stuff that had already been written. I don't understand that. And that's the question mark on why I'm starting to think that there's a lot more to this story, simply because of how these contracts were farmed out. Also, according to Dr. Hal Puthoff, he was the one responsible. Him, Dr. Puthoff, was responsible for contracting these 38. So interesting that he gave 5 to Dr. Eric Davis, obviously a friend of his for many, many years. So it's kind of an interesting aspect to all of this that not many people are talking about. And when you start digging in deep, you see that a lot of these people are connected and have been connected for decades. Now, what does that mean? Again, I don't know. But it does beg for all of us to ask the question, this was taxpayer money. What's it going for? Did they really sit there and make those 38 reports, or did they repurpose what was already there? And if they repurposed what was already there, was it an exchange of money between friends and they got a pretty fat check for not a whole lot? Or did that money get funneled somewhere else? Now, that's not a baseless accusation. That's obviously provable here, that it doesn't make sense to pay somebody $750,000 for a report that is probably maybe either the same thing of what they've already written in the past, or maybe just repurposed. And to some of these super geniuses on that list, I would imagine it's not hard to repurpose these things, doing it very, very quickly. So the $750,000, $500,000 for that, $1 million. If an author got 5 of those contracts, how much did he make? So we got to ask those questions. And I think it being taxpayer money, I think we're all obligated to ask that question. Maybe it has an easy answer, but it's something that we should ask. I just caught my eye, UFO issue, which, by the way, if you are not following him, definitely do so on Twitter. He writes some articles. Chris, you got to write a little bit more, by the way. But he did the math. That's $580,000 per DIRD report. So $580,000 divided up between those 38. So, hey, I'm scratching my head on it, but it's something that I keep digging, and I hope that more people start asking those questions. Some unidentified aerial phenomena documents. This was kind of a fun one. These records actually came from multiple FOIA requests to multiple agencies, branches of the military to be more specific, the U.S. Navy and the Department of the Air Force. Now, I've got full presentations on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, especially how it connects to the Navy. I invite you all to watch that on this very channel. Make sure you click on that subscribe button below to make sure you see new videos, but also, keep a bookmark of this because there's quite a few presentations already that dives deep in this. But you'll notice that the United States Air Force has been pretty mum. They have been silent on the issue. They haven't been talking about it a lot. And I honestly, I don't know why. And so what I did was I started filing FOIA requests, not only to the U.S. Navy to see what they were talking about, but to the United States Air Force. Now, I'm going to first deal with the U.S. Navy first. If you have not seen these records, I'm not going to sit here and read this to you, but this ties back to the UFO guidelines story, first published by Politico back in April of 2019. What you're looking at here is what I believe to be the original statement that was crafted about what we have been told are UFO guidelines. This was the original internal statement that was then taken by the spokesperson, which we know is Joseph Gradisher, who then gave it to Politico. Brian Bender broke that story, and what you're seeing here is essentially an internal working explanation of what UAPs are. Why is this important? Well, we start challenging journalists, which we should do. We have to double check. And let me tell you, I've found quite a few examples now where journalists are truncating statements. So they're splitting them, let's say, in half, taking the first part, which is, headline grabbing, and then taking out the second part. And the second part is essentially justifying it or giving additional information that may make it maybe not so exciting. So journalists will take that out. And even though, we all edit, I've worked in television a long time, we edit videos, we edit interviews. Our writing, all of us, whether we're non-journalists but writing articles, blogging, we're investigative journalists, we have to edit. So I get all that. But changing the context, that's something else. What's really interesting about this original one is there's really kind of nothing about UFOs in it. It's all about drones and balloons. Now, for those who don't know me or have seen my videos, let me please say this, and for some it might be a repeat. I am a firm believer that the UFO phenomena, whatever it may be, is not only real, there is an active cover-up by the U.S. military and by the U.S. government, and we need to know more about it. It should be taken more seriously. My other shameless plug here is I wrote a book about how the Pentagon and the U.S. military and U.S. government has lied in the past about this topic. But you need evidence to prove or disprove those lies. And so I just want to give you groundwork because I know there's a lot of new names that I'm seeing in the chat room. And for those new listeners on the audio podcast version, that's my belief. But I'm very skeptical on what is going on today. And official documentation is kind of playing that out a little bit, that this may be more embellished by the media than it should be, giving a aura of something that maybe isn't there. And so when you read this statement in full, you can really see that they were talking about drones and unmanned aerial systems, that people were flying these things into military installations. In past presentations, I've showed you declassified military files on just that, where people have flown in drones to military bases, and it's a problem. So that was really what they were talking about here. And so that was one of the big finds in the emails. And that's that's the importance of these emails, is that you see how they're talking internally. So if they don't black it out for what's called exemption B5, which they call internal deliberation, I think is the legal term, that's a FOIA exemption. So as long as they don't hit it with a B5 exemption, you get to see stuff like this. And that's what's really interesting, is you see their thought process from the inside. Because who knows if John F. Stratton from the Nimitz, and that's a weird coincidence, I guess, the Nimitz Intelligence Center, when he crafted this, if he ever knew that people like me would start going after those records, who knows? But it is an interesting take on what they were talking about. What also came up in a Air Force, not Navy, but Air Force FOIA request was a Navy document. That sometimes happens. This was what they call an internal working document, or an RTQ, which was a response to query document. Now, the RTQ is the talking points, and there's quite a few pages to this, so I invite you all to go to theblackvault.com, download it. I'm not going to read it. But it was really a very interesting breakdown for the spokespeople and the media liaisons, so to speak, for the U.S. Navy on how they were dealing with the UAP topic. This document never has seen the light of day. In fact, I question whether or not they should have released it, but they did. I did verify with the U.S. Air Force, was everything they sent me releasable? And they said yes. I asked them to double check some lack of redactions. As crazy as that sounds, I don't fight redactions, but they actually didn't redact some telephone numbers and cell phone numbers of some fairly important people. It's one of those rare occasions that when I post the full document dump, I will probably do it, simply because it's pointless to put people's cell phones numbers up there. But the U.S. Air Force said, yeah, it was clearable. So here you go. This was the RTQ internal document that the Navy used to deal with people like me, the New York Times, Politico, Vice News, whomever. This is what they did. This was also another interesting find in the emails of the spokesperson for the U.S. Air Force. This was Laura McAndrews. You may have seen her. She's never, that I know of, as of the recording of this, she's never talked about UAPs in an official stance. Getting a quote on UAPs from the Air Force has been incredibly challenging. But Laura McAndrews did issue statements on Area 51. So for those of you who follow these headlines, that name probably rings a bell for that reason. So I was seeking emails on what they were saying internally. Were they talking about it at all? Did they not care? So on and so forth. This one really stuck out to me because, again, this was internal. You can see who was involved here. A colonel with the United States Air Force. This is a civilian with the U.S. Air Force. This is a major in the U.S. Air Force. This was written to the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force or Public Affairs Office. Yes, these acronyms get insane to keep track. But Laura McAndrews was the one that wrote it. And again, civilian, but she was a spokesperson. So she wrote it to all these people. And I'll jump down here. What the Navy was trying to talk about, meaning the UFO guideline statements, but by the way, those statements never said UFOs. What the Navy was trying to talk about was unmanned aerial systems. That got turned into UFOs and aliens. Essentially, she was just saying like the interpretation by the media was something that the U.S. Air Force obviously didn't agree with. Is this a cover-up? Possibly. Are they just not in the know? Because there's a lot of people out there in social network land that love to trash spokespeople for being not in the know and clueless. Well, they sure praise when the spokespeople say something they like, and then all of a sudden they're their best friends. But when they say something that they don't like, it's, well, they're misinformed and this and that. So all of those are great theories. But this actually, and when you dive into the Air Force emails, and they talk a lot about drones, unmanned aerial systems, very much like what the spokesperson was talking about internally here with unmanned aerial systems. Here's just a friendly reminder, and for those who don't know, that's exactly how Luis Elizondo described those 3 UFO videos that To the Stars Academy has released. Why is that? Like, what are the odds that all of these internal documents align, internal emails align with how Mr. Luis Elizondo described them on the inside? Completely contradictory to what's on the outside of what he claims. That's not me picking on him. It's just something that we have to look at. And I hope one day somebody asks him the question. But if it was just his document, the argument was that he did that so that DOPSR, meaning the agency to review the security, would not really hesitate allowing him to use the records. That's fine. However, across the board with the U.S. Navy in those emails, I showed you one, but I invite you to read all of them, with the U.S. Air Force, all of those internal documents that when written, I would argue they probably didn't think people would chase after them. They all have the same story about what they are talking about with those 3 videos and what they are talking about UAPs, meaning we all define it as a UFO and this is it. This is disclosure. To some people, they think it's a disclosure with a capital D. But all the official documents that have come out all point to something else. Yes, that makes me sound like a skeptic, and yes, people hate me for saying it. But the only way to get around it is to accept that the Air Force Public Affairs Office in the Pentagon, that the Air Force, and you'll see in the emails on multiple levels, including Space Command at NORAD Air Force Base and the Air Force Safety Center, the Pentagon spokespeople, and Mr. Luis Elizondo, you have to accept that all of them crafted all of these emails and documents on the off chance that one day someone like me would find them and it was all a cover-up. That part doesn't make sense to me. Occam's razor says that if all of these agencies are saying the same thing, then maybe we should look at that. And that's why I've always kind of been stuck on this, because I think it's incredibly important. Another reason why these emails are important is also it brought up one where it talked about a change in policy. Essentially, anything that went into the United States Air Force or the Navy was now being routed directly to the Department of Defense in the Pentagon, or OSD, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, for an answer. The Air Force was no longer talking about how the Air Force viewed UAPs. Not that they did at all, but it sounded like everything is now being forwarded over. This email says the Navy requested it. So I don't know what happened from the point that I got the statements that those videos were UAPs to now. This was September 20, 2019, when it was written. So you're talking about 5.5 weeks ago, as of the recording of this, that something happened. So now they're consolidating everything to one person within the Pentagon. And let me be the first to tell you, that poor woman, and yes, I'm sympathetic, is now getting the Air Force, the Navy, all DOD inquiries, and I'll add in one more because I figured it out the hard way, the Defense Intelligence Agency, all on OSAP, ATIP, UFOs, UAPs, and anything unidentified is going to that one person from any member of the media or anybody seeking a statement. Why? I don't know, but that is a very interesting development that they are no longer, meaning the military branches are no longer speaking for themselves on this issue. They are just saying go to the Pentagon, and they've taken the lead. I don't know. I wish I did, because it is now incredibly problematic getting statements. I really wanted to do this in like 20 minutes, and it's been 50. I don't know how that happens. This is the last thing I'm going to deal with. This, I know, is a very popular topic. This was the CRADA agreement. I say CRADA. I don't know if it's the exact way to say the acronym. So if it's not, I apologize. But CRADA agreement, and that stands for Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. A press release was sent out by To the Stars Academy. Obviously, they're getting a lot of headlines when it comes to the UAP UFO issue. And they sent out a press release about this agreement with the Army. It was really tough to kind of figure out what they're talking about. He said that TTSA's technology solutions, which leverage developments in materials science, space-time metric engineering, quantum physics, beamed energy propulsion, and active camouflage, have the potential to enhance survivability and effectiveness of multiple Army systems. TTSA will share its discoveries with Ground Vehicle Systems Center, GVSC, and Ground Vehicle Survivability and Protection, GVSP, and the U.S. Army shall provide laboratories, expertise, support, and resources to help characterize the technologies and its applications. Really kind of vague, if you ask me. I'm not picking on them, but I wrote an article about this and spoke to an investor, Nathan Hendrickson, and he is an investor in TTSA, a supporter. He was very confused as well, and he felt like it wasn't transparent. Now, I went directly to the Army. Now, for those who want to know exactly what a CRADA agreement is, it essentially, this is the page, you can see it online, feel free to Google it, but essentially it's a way for the U.S. Army to allow private corporations and other groups, there's kind of a list that it applies to, which is all on the website, to share resources. Sometimes they're reimbursed, the Army's paid for it. Other times they say, okay, we'll let you use our experts and our equipment, but you give us the results as well. That way we can learn from it, but you're utilizing our resources. That's what the agreement was essentially all about. So I invite you to go, double check that with the Army, but that is in a nutshell what these agreements are. So it's not a partnership per se. It's not a contract, and that is important to note too, because a lot of people are thinking, well, they're contracted with the Army, so they're hand in hand. Not really. It's a way for the military to share those resources. So I reached out to Doug Hello, and forgive me, Doug, if I have that pronounced incorrectly, but I am going to read you this statement because I just read you the TTSA press release. I was wondering what the heck any of that meant. My theory, albeit dismissed. All right, I'll stop saying Andrew. I'm not picking on him. I'm not, but I often get flack, and so I say it. Bad habit. I'll stop. So the Public Affairs Office for the U.S. Army, they had sent me this statement, gave a lot more clarity on what this was all about. Specific to the Stars Academy CRADA, TTSA has a set of different materials, the properties of which they're interested in investigating the properties. it was pointed out on Twitter as a bad sentence. As materials research in general is of key interest to Army research, the Army is interested in any insights gained from investigating the properties of these materials too. I'll let you read the rest of it. I'll keep it on screen for a second. But essentially they were saying this is all about the materials. Now that's intriguing to me. Wow, why does the Army care about the metamaterials? And so that was an intriguing part. So I followed up and I asked the Army, I said, hey, okay, so can I get a statement on the fact that these materials are allegedly from unidentified flying objects or unidentified aerial phenomena? To me, it's the same thing. And obviously there's a connotation that comes with that. And the Army added, as far as the materials, the Army's interest is in the potential for novel materials and exploring the edges of materials science. Any speculation as to their origin is, pardon the pun, immaterial. Well done. Well played. So they really have no interest, so they claim, of the background. They just want to know if there's any benefit to them. So they're offering TTSA the resources. This is a slide from one of Luis Elizondo's presentation. These are the metamaterials that they're talking about. This one down here is the one, the magnesium bismuth piece that we keep hearing about. That's the one that was on the forefront of one of their press releases. That was after they posted malachite on the press release, but regardless, that is what we hear the most about. This one here, I've got a personal connection to, going all the way back more than, it's got to be more than 15 years now. I knew the man who found it, knew the man who had the UFO sighting. I analyzed part of this piece for a History Channel show. They later came back and appeared in a later episode that I did for History Channel that I produced and directed. And so I've got kind of an intimate connection with this one, so to speak, just simply because I've been able to get parts of this into scientists' hands and stuff like that. And there's interesting stuff about it. There will be a show on this in the future. Don't worry. But just a quick note that's why I know what this one is. It's called the Bob White object. I invite you all to Google that. It's an interesting story. I don't have, there's skeptical explanations that it's slag. Same explanation for this down here. That very well may be true, but no one's been able to definitively prove that. Also a hint, I wanted a opportunity to give you a tease on what's coming up next week. However, I don't have a date locked yet, but here's my tease. There will be a show on this as well. So that is coming up for you guys in a live stream format. As long as my power holds here in California, as long as the fire situation does not get out of whack, I'll have that posted here in the next couple of days, and we'll be doing shows on these. So that was the CRADA agreement. If you followed the story, you'll probably see the Black Vault was linked by quite a few different news outlets and so on. This was the actual agreement that had not been released before. I was the first to get it online. Others were to follow. They eventually got it from the Army as well. But yes, I was the first one. And so thankfully, those media outlets credited the Black Vault for doing that, getting it out there into the public domain, which came directly from the Public Affairs Office. Here's the last thing I will say about this, and then I'm going to open up the lines. We'll see who wants to call in. And let me go ahead and put this on right now. So you'll see on screen, and I'm going to get set up here. You're going to see on screen a call number, 866-856-9722. That is a toll-free call-in line. Very, very quickly, if I am not ready for your call, I'm going to put you on hold. You're going to hear some music. If somebody calls behind you, they're going to get what place they are in line. And I'll bring you on as soon as I can. Make sure my volume is turned down in the background. If you are nervous, don't want to call in, no worries. Text messaging has been very, very popular as well. That would be area code 661-888-2568. You can ask me on anything that I spoke about here already or anything else. I am always open. I expect nothing less from you guys than honest questions, and I will be answering as best as I can, if I can, on anything you want to know. So the last thing that I will deal with here on that last slide before I switched over to the call-in line is a question. You are walking the metamaterials into where? Why are we giving it back to the Army? We, meaning the general public. Let's just say, let's play make-believe for a second, that everything that the United States military and government has been doing has been covering up this topic. Everything that TTSA has claimed is 100% true. They have X amount of pieces of these metamaterial that they now are, touting to the world, hey, we're going to test these and get results. Let's just operate. All of that is absolutely true. TTSA's message has been that the military is part of this cover-up. Mr. Luis Elizondo says he resigned because there was a lack of care and attention. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but a lack of attention to this very topic, that it was a threat. That I actually agree with them over, that whatever these UAPs or UFOs are, there is a threat narrative. So I align with TTSA on that claim, and they're often attacked even by their own supporters on that. But I agree with them. If that is the case, and the military plays some kind of a role in this, why give it back to them? Why take these pieces of whatever they are and hand it right back to the scientists and those experts that are allegedly part of the cover-up, which I also agree with, meaning they're part of the cover-up. So why give it back to them? To me, that's one of the silliest things that you can do. And so I think that we need to start asking, why are you doing that? And there's a lot of these conspiracy theories out there that they're working with the military, they're working with the government, that it's a PSY operation. There's CIA claims because of the backgrounds. All of that is fine, well, and good. But if you say that part of the issue here or problem is the United States military, then why create an agreement and share all the results? In our make-believe scenario here, let me state that if it is true, 100%, operating off that assumption that they have a piece of something that would be considered alien technology, right? Let's just think that way for a moment. The U.S. Army now knows it. That's the agreement, that they have to share those results. In my personal opinion, the first matter of business would be to classify it. And in the interest of national security, they would take that back. They would take that piece or pieces into their possession for the greater good. And I think that is, I would rather less answers than that happening, because they're now in a position that, yes, in my opinion, if the military wants to do it, they will shut it down. And so if the claims of them having alien technology are true, and that's irrefutable, the Army will classify it. I don't see any way about it. I don't see them saying, hey, let's do a joint press conference. I hope I am wrong, but for the greater good of humanity, I believe there's a reason for the cover-up. And so if we do have an alien connection here, and all of a sudden the Army has knowledge before anyone else, that there's proof of it now, physical, tangible, scientific proof, that's a problem. Because that ties into exactly why they would have the cover-up in the first place. And essentially they would take that over. Now, that's an opinion. There's nothing by the book. A quick note, I have tried to find contingency plans for alien contact. A little bit of a different situation, but contingency plan. So let's just say, UFO shows up on the White House lawn, so to speak. What would happen? And the government and military has a lot of contingency plans on just about everything and anything. So to my surprise, no one has ever admitted to having such a plan. I will tell you, I found a contingency plan for the zombie apocalypse. That is not a joke. That is documented. I found it in the National Security Agency files. Of course, like when you read the document, it gets silly. They talk about like chicken zombies and stuff like that. But it's a contingency plan for the zombie apocalypse nonetheless. So you can't really go wrong with talking about that. But why I bring it up is they literally have these contingency plans for everything. And so even though they claim the zombie one is for training purposes and is more of a, generic topic that just kind of applies to all emergency situations, or so they claim. It's there nonetheless, but nothing with aliens. So in my opinion, if the cover-up is real, it connects to aliens, there's a national security risk behind it all. If they find out that some group like TTSA has evidence of it, they'll classify it. I just don't see any way around it. So that's what I'll say in closing about the CRADA agreement. So feel free to, I'm going to go ahead and I've got text messages, I've got emails. I'm going to go ahead and bring the emails up. I'm going to try and switch back and forth between a couple of different screens here. The first and foremost, I'm curious what country code this is. You'll have to let me know in the chat on what country you're listening in based on your phone number. So let me go ahead and get to this. What are your thoughts on 5G? I have it. Well, I don't, I'll be honest with you, I know about it. I know that there's a lot of speculation behind it. I worry about, some of the long-term effects to these new technologies and Wi-Fi signals and cell phone towers and this, that, and the other thing. Because it's a scary, really start to think about it with some common sense. I'm not a scientist, but it's like when you talk about how much data can go through the air at the speeds that it can go through the air in, that's got to take a toll. And one thing you don't have is the longevity of the technology to test what the long-term effects are. So what if it takes 15 years for 5G to really show what it does? 20 years, 25 years. We won't know it for quite some time. Now, of course, scientists speculate, well, this is fine here, fine there. But we just don't know until the passage of time. So with 5G, I'll have to check again. I think it's been about a year since I looked for records if the government had anything, and I didn't find much. But obviously the conspiracies really surround what's going on. So country code 47, listening in from Norway, Sid Vitch. I don't know if that is you or you just heard me say the country code, but I really do appreciate you texting from Norway and listening and watching. I really do appreciate that. Here's another one from the UK. You guys are texting from all over the place. Hi, John. Just would like to say great work from CJ in the UK. CJ, I really appreciate that support. Thank you very, very much. 5G has been tested for almost 6 years now. Yeah, but that's the thing. That's not really a long time frame at this point. What I'm saying is long-term effects, 15 years, 25 years, to kind of see what is going on with this technology, what types of effects, if any. It could be, perfectly safe. I'm not knowledgeable enough on 5G to give you an educated answer on that, other than it hasn't been around long enough, in my opinion, to really show what it can do. All right. I got another one here. This one's coming in on a Twitter message. What is with you? Hold on. From Tim. What is with you and Brian Bender sparring on Twitter? So here's the thing about the Twitter battle, which I am largely trying to stay out of. I really genuinely am trying to stay out of this one. Brian Bender is the journalist from Politico who broke the original story of ATIP back on December 16th, 2017, along with the New York Times. They both had these articles. Yes, he had me blocked. For those who watch this program, the short answer is he blocked me because I wrote about the Pentagon statement on Luis Elizondo. That was the reason he gave me, because I wrote him privately and went, hey, man, what's going on? So he's had me blocked, and he unblocked me just to throw some insults and saying I have no credibility with anybody out there on the UAP topic, that he doubled down and said the credibility thing again in a different tweet, really essentially just kind of throwing shots. And so I asked him, I'm like, did you really just unblock me to throw shots? And he said yes. And that was why he unblocked me, just to throw some insults. All of you can to log on and see it. Before I started this live stream, and if you're listening, Brian, which I know you listen to every episode, give me a call. The phone number's on the screen. Who knows? Maybe this is him. Give me 1 second here, James. I'm going to go ahead and get to you in 1 second. So he started throwing these shots. And honestly, I've tried to stay out of it. yes, I have kind of went back to him. And of course the TTSA fans say, see, you're a big meanie. Well, of course they have more harsh words to say about me. But of course they blame me. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I just got attacked by the defense editor of Politico with some, pretty strongly worded stuff here about credibility and attacking, saying I'm not a real journalist, which I'm not. But he meant it as a jab, essentially, that he felt the need to defend himself. And so I asked him, I said, okay, defend this or that. And of course it was crickets. So to go back to your question, Tim, I don't know, to be honest with you, what the sparring is. Like I said, I've tried to stay away from the trolls. It's hard to do, sadly, because they throw some pretty ridiculous shots. They make up stuff, which is just ludicrous, just simply because that doesn't help anybody. So with him, though, it's like, wait a minute, you're on a different level. I mean, I would expect this from the trolls out there, but why you? Like, I don't get it. And but it makes him feel good. Apparently, he keeps doing it. And I haven't responded to his latest. Of course, somebody had told him, "Hey, look at John's research on the timeline," because he was asking for evidence of TTSA and their kind of missteps on some of these topics. And he said he wanted a credible source, not me. So he's, he doesn't like sourced material. He says that I'm not credible for that. So I don't know. Long-winded way of saying I'm not real sure. I invite you all to see it, see context. I haven't deleted any of my tweets. We'll see. We'll see if he kind of keeps at it. Let me see here. James, I'm sorry to keep you on hold there. Welcome to the show. I'm sorry, James, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can, sir. That was my fault. I had you muted. I forgot to turn it on.
All right.
If I can have you, though, turn me down in the back, that would be very helpful. We're getting an echo. But other than that, What can I do for you?
I'd like to know if you have anything on the nefarious Colonel Edwards, who is avowedly influenced Bigelow in buying the Skinwalker Ranch and buying all of MUFON's files.
I don't have much information on that, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm starting to get into the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing a little bit more. It's intriguing. I think there's much more to the story than what we've been told in documentaries and books and stuff. But no, on that specific question, I wouldn't have anything really to add on him, I'm sorry to say.
It's going to lead to a big rabbit hole.
Lead to a big what? I'm sorry?
Rabbit hole.
You're probably right on that. Yeah, and these claims going back to, I don't know how long you've listened, James, to the show, but I was kind of talking about how OSAP, that original contract, that there's been these claims that have been made that it was to essentially investigate the paranormal is what that they were talking about with OSAP. And so what I didn't quite understand is how they can draw that line to Skinwalker Ranch. And when you talk about a rabbit hole, yeah, I just don't see a lot of this, I just don't see a lot of this coming to fruition like some people are claiming. We'll see. But it's a rabbit hole, and it's going to be hard to dig out of for sure.
Well, in those files that you're talking about concerning that research program, what they're looking for is an alloy or a metal that can protect vehicles and life inside the vehicles from the Van Allen belt and cosmic bombardment. Something they know that's in the EB craft that they're familiar with, but can't use for their own.
Yeah, and I mean, if that, according to if you're talking about the Army and the metamaterials, yeah, you're probably right there on the fact that they're just looking at what can they benefit from, and that's the sharing of the information. And so that's why it makes sense that they would do these types of agreements, not just with TTSA, but any corporation that may say, hey, look, we've got this idea, we've got this material, we've got this concept, so let's get this tested, but we don't have the money. The Army says, yeah, we'll help you, but you got to tell us exactly what you're doing and who you are and what you're going to use it for, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's smart on the side of the Army because it doesn't cost them anything other than the resources they put forward. They claim they don't care about the origins. I personally, I would think you should. If you're looking at material that somebody's claiming is from a UAP, I would think that you would need to look at that. One other thing, too, that I'll throw out to you, James, and to those listening about the materials, I played a little hypothetical situation before where I said, let's just say it is alien and now there's scientific proof. The Army would classify it. It's very possible, and this will backfire with my theory, is that it's very possible that those metamaterials, let's just say they were a piece of a already classified piece of technology. The question mark is then if they determined, hey, this was I'm using this as a bad example, but, let's just say it was the wingtip of an SR-71 or something that was, classified material. Would they classify that? My answer would be, yeah, they probably would, so the material does not fall into the wrong hands. Now you have the Army took possession of the metamaterial, they classified it, so they're hiding aliens. And so that, in that respect, it can absolutely backfire on them, giving them a piece of what potentially could be classified technology. So I don't really see a good outcome here with the Army agreement at all. I really don't. I understand why the Army is doing it. I understand why TTSA is doing it. I just don't see a good outcome. I really don't. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, there's another consideration. There's another consideration about what they're up to.
What's that?
I think they're trying to invite the public back in because they realize over-specialization has been counterproductive, as well as all the containment that they have with their security classifications. And it goes right back to what Bob Lazar describes when he has been trying to talk about his experiences in S1.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what's hard. You talk about a rabbit hole, there's so many different aspects to this that we have to go down. And it's, I think that's part of the plan. I'm starting to think that on the side of the government, the military, and TTSA, is you just throw all this stuff out there, just keep throwing it out there, good, bad, right, or wrong, factual or fabricated, it doesn't matter, bury people and stuff, and then the majority of the people then won't care about the nitty-gritty, they just want the bottom line, so they don't care about the rabbit hole anymore, they just want to sit in the grass pasture that's next to it. I don't see good outcomes to some of this.
Do you sense that they were about a certain kind of disclosure, I'd say a special disclosure, and suddenly they put the wraps on it and they've gone the other way?
They meaning TTSA?
I'm talking about the entire government military establishment having to do with ufology and, whatever they want to call these craft that are doing things that we can't possibly do.
If this was a disclosure effort, it couldn't have been done more wrong,
I know. I think they backed up. I think they're going to use Greer. I don't like Greer, but I think they're going to use Greer and his little group. And, of course, he had some good people in it, but I don't think they really want to have that much to do with him anymore.
Yeah.
However, I think what it was about is that they, I don't know if you go along with this or not, but it's like Werner von Braun told Carol Rosin. They have 3 steps to implement the New World Order. The first is asteroids. The second is the greenhouse effect, or what they call now global warming. And the third was hostile ET attack.
Yeah.
But you know why they might have called off the third?
Why is that?
Because there are no EBs anymore. Or their craft. And they can't navigate EB craft.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some that they pretty well fixed up where they could fly if they could actually interact with the controls, but they can't.
Yeah.
They can't interface with them.
It's interesting stuff, James. I appreciate your phone call, and definitely keep listening and call me back on future shows. I'm not trying to hang up on you. I've got quite a few messages actually in the queue here.
Well, you spent a lot of time on me, and I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate your call. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
As James said, it's a rabbit hole on so many different levels, and Skinwalker Ranch is one of them. I saw, hey, it's a big scam, a sham in the chat room. It's quite possible. I'm digging in a little bit more deep and bringing somebody on to speak about that very issue here in the coming weeks. That's another show that's going to be going on. Different perspective. I don't know what to think of it, but it'll be a good show. I'm going to go ahead and hit a couple text messages here. Chris from the UK, another UK listener. Thanks so much. Have you ever looked into the chemtrails thing? Yes, I have looked into the chemtrails thing. I find it intriguing, but when it comes to government documents, there's really nothing there. Intriguing in the sense that the official word, because I know chemtrails are largely debunkable by some scientific means. So some may think I'm crazy for even entertaining the idea. But keep in mind, I do have historical documents that show that they have sprayed material, different testing programs by the military, where they call them harmless spores. And the harmless spores, would essentially get caught in the wind, the jet stream, and then fly to neighboring cities. That's all provable. They've done stuff like that. So again, when I talk about history repeating itself all the time, that's why, because documentation really does kind of support that chemtrails could be something. But from a scientific standpoint, I know it's largely kind of scoffed at. And when it comes to present day testing, I haven't really been able to find anything here in America or worldwide. One more, and then Jesse, if you're listening still volume-wise, I'll get you on the phone. But let me get another text message here. There's quite a few. There being a threat, I believe, is unfounded. How do you feel there is? If they can get here from wherever they originate from, and for as long as some believe they've been visiting us, don't you think that they would have done something by now? Getting hooked up with the military poses more of a threat to humanity than the visitors, if there is any. That's a great point. Knowing past history, man poses more of a threat to himself than anything. Okay, sorry, a lot of these I'm reading for the first time, so I'm sorry I'm kind of jumpy. So essentially, how can I justify that there's a threat? Here's where I align with TTSA. However, I think I slightly differ. I don't believe it is 100% a threat. I don't believe that this is, we got to run for the hills, aliens are here to kill us all. I had produced a documentary for the History Channel that was all about if aliens were to come here and attack us, how would they do it? Now, obviously, the premise was if they were going to attack, how would they do it? And I had a lot of fun with it, but I explored a lot and studied for a long time for this show on the fact that when you talk about civilizations and so on, and you talk about the survival of a certain species, it's not like when I say that there's a threat, it's not necessarily mean that there's an intention or they intend to harm us. It may be about survival, and that was what I had written into my show. Essentially, what it turns out is that the alien planet that they came from, the way that I originally wrote it, it changed by the air date. But essentially, they lived in a carbon dioxide-rich environment. So where we breathe oxygen, they were breathing carbon dioxide. Scientists out there, they may say, well, that's ridiculous because it was television. We were having a little bit of fun because on alien worlds, you never know how things come up. And so this was a carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere, and they were essentially needing to leave their planet, just like one day we will need to leave ours. As they were scanning the cosmos, they came across a blue marble that had a rising CO2 level, and or carbon dioxide level, and so they honed in on us. And the idea and premise was it was about survival for them, and they got here, and obviously they're very highly advanced. They could traverse the stars, and the question mark was, well, would they destroy us? And so what I posed was, if it was about the survival of humanity and we had to go to either another planet or we'll make it small scale, we had to go in the middle of the Sahara Desert and we needed to make a compound in order for us to survive. But in the way was an anthill. And that was the only thing that was standing between us and the survival of humanity was this, anthill. Would we destroy it? We didn't go there to kill it, but it's about the greater good and the survival of humanity. So that threat narrative, the argument is always like, well, they're really advanced, and why would they come and kill us? They'd do it already, or this, that, and the other thing. And my argument was it may not even be the intent. It may be, again, juxtapose it with humanity. It may simply be because that is what we would do. And we are that proverbial anthill in the cosmos that stood between this hypothetical alien race that needed the carbon dioxide atmosphere and their survival. And so, and yes, they did. They terraformed the planet by the end, and the remaining survivors. We've got scenes of them choking to death and so on. So we created this. It was science fiction. I mean, it wasn't real, obviously, and we stretched a little, but the premise was solid, and that's what we were talking about. So it's not necessarily they're intending to threaten us, but it just so happens to be that they're just more advanced, and if it comes to survival, and they're a biological entity that needs a planet to be in, and hey, it's quite possible. Jesse, I'm sorry to keep you on hold there for so long. I wanted to answer one more question on the text message. If you could just turn me down in the back. I hear the echo, but how are you? Jesse? All right, Jesse.
Yes.
Yes, you there?
John.
Yes. Hi, Jesse.
Can you hear me all right, sir?
I can. Yeah, I'm going to turn you down here.
Okay.
All right. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm enjoying this beautiful October Halloween day in Portland, Oregon, and there's leaves of different colors everywhere, and I'm so glad I left LA 10 years ago, and I want everybody from LA to move here.
Well, I just happen to be in LA. I'll have to give you a call, get some details. What can I do for you?
All right, let's get to the meat here, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. A couple of things I want to run by you. First of all, I'm very disappointed in Chase Klotsky, and I don't know what's going on the past year with her. She seems to be like some sort of double agent at this point. Anytime I make a comment that has any sort of questioning involving TTSA, I'm immediately jumped on by this individual. I've interviewed her in the past. She's a MUFON person.
Yeah.
And she was very sweet, and I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm seeing pictures of her eating linguine with Lou and drinking wine, and I'm like, what is going on? So that's one question. Next question, why is nobody, John, talking about that the Tic Tac could easily have been tech from another institution testing us, a la Air Force, etc.?
Yeah. Good.
I think that is a much better possibility in theory, and I've had that run by me by people in the know that have worked as airline folks. Third thing and last thing, and I'm going to let the master here speak, and we all thank you for your hard work. We have had some people really destroy ufology in the past year by supporting a group that is obviously wanted to split this community and implode it, and they've done a terrific job. It's obvious that DeLong really has nothing to do with this anymore, and now the people who are funding this effort seem to be funding, to me, a black project, etc. John, what do you have to say about any or all of these things?
Well, hold on. On the third part of that black project, what do you mean? Do you think like the TTSA mission is tied into like a black program? Is that?
I do.
Okay.
I think they are a
like a
massive
CIA op?
Exactly.
Okay.
PSYOP, a la, but now they're with the Army, so it just seems like a fully funded black project.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I can deal with those. Absolutely. So three things. So the Chase thing, I don't like talking bad about people per se. Here's what I will say about the Chase issue. She's always welcome on this show if she wants to make her claim of being a lobbyist, a registered registered lobbyist. But as we know, documentation shows that she's not a registered lobbyist. I believe she's changed her story. She blocked me on Twitter, so I don't know what her normal story is anymore. I will say this, not about her specifically, but in a broader sense. The supporters, some, and let me stress some. I always put it in caps whenever I tweet about it. There are some supporters that are very cultist in their approach of supporting TTSA. Let me stress some. And what I mean by that is they get vicious if you say anything bad. If you question them, if you don't believe 100%, and that's dangerous. And so we're seeing these people that were revered in ufological circles, if you want to call them that, people that have like seemingly turned into different people. Now, of course, people will argue that about me, and that's fine, that I'm not the same and I harp on TTSA. The difference is that I'll back up the criticism that I have. And if there is a response to it, I have a 100% open door policy for them to respond. They choose not to. And sadly, not a whole lot of people ask some of these questions. So although the argument will probably be put up against me, what I say is that some of these people that we have respected, people that I have respected personally, have seemingly changed. They've thrown that investigative thirst out the window, and they say what TTSA goes. It's like the gospel according to TTSA. And if you go against
John,
the
just
gospel,
to interrupt
that's
you for a
problematic.
second.
Yeah.
I just want to add that, the reason I bring up names is only because certain folks, because I know these people. I've interviewed them over in the past. Some of the folks don't know I used to have a popular radio program, Euphanaut Radio, in the past. I've had Alejandro doing my news for me years past. These people have turned into money sharks because the topic got hot.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
It sadly is. And there are financial benefits to some of this. There really are. And to create a narrative, embellish a narrative, whether it be for the sale of something. I'm sorry, but the book by Bob Lazar is a prime example that they meaning TTSA, decided to publish Bob Lazar's book. And then when it was kind of revealed that they were the ones that did it, then they started talking about it. Because they never announced it before people on Twitter started really firing shots at them saying, how can you do this? And then they said that it was kind of, I don't want to say full of, I'm paraphrasing, but they did say facts that they could not verify. And so it was like, well, wait a minute, what facts could you not verify? You're telling everybody this is a story. And so that's great that they want to make money off of the selling of that book. But in my personal opinion, that's an embellished story for profit. It just is. Like, I gave it a shot.
Yeah.
I watched the documentary. I interviewed Jeremy Corbell. I encourage to this day people to watch that documentary and decide for themselves. I'm not here to tell anybody how to think. But sadly, there's too much evidence to show that that is a sham. And so you see that a lot and in this field, even away from TTSA. And going back to your question, you're seeing these groups of people that they've just kind of like, I don't want to say sold out because it's so rude to say, but they've sold out. They
sold out, John.
Yeah, that's the problem. And when people start, I'll say this again for people who don't know, people that are respected in this field that support TTSA have literally made up stuff about me to try and discredit what I am saying. You now have the defense editor of Politico who has come out of the woodworks from blocking me to try and attack my credibility. Not with facts, not with sourced anything, not with information, just attacks. And those people that we're talking about, they love it. They eat it up. They retweet it. They like it. Oh, John just got his you-know-what handed it to him. But what? Why? Because he insulted me? Okay, but the fact still stands. His reporting is bad. Or the facts still stand. People sell out. And that's what's a shame. It really is. Now, I don't mean to go off on a rant, but it's sad to see. It really is. People, again, that we respect and that we kind of look up to.
Well,
to give us that
I'm going to bring
information.
up another one, John, because I know it's harder for you to do. It's easier for me to do. Dolan, what a sellout. Sitting next to Linda Moulton Howe pushing the alien autopsy video again. And Antarctica bullcrap with Spartan 1 and False Prophet 2. This is crazy, John. Yeah. And Dolan, talk about rolling over and saying, scratch my back, guys, and let's get as many TV shows about Travis Walton as we can.
Yeah.
This is crazy. These people remind me of the pubs saying there's no quid pro quo.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is upsetting. I like Richard. I don't have anything against him, and there's very rarely. I'll give you a preface here. I was asked by a journalist yesterday. I did an interview with a periodical. I'll announce it when they're ready to publish. But they said, who can I talk to that you trust and really look up to? They didn't say look up to, but who do you trust that really kind of tells it like it is? And I was totally blank. I got a lot of friends in this field. But I'm totally blank on who I can say.
Stan.
Oh, okay, well, I'll agree with you there. Yeah, I would definitely give Stanton's name. But,
there's two left, you and Stan, buddy. That's it.
Well,
you got guys like Nick Pope. Are you kidding me? You got guys like this new guy, MJ Bananas, and all these other millennial crazies who are trying to turn this thing into Comic-Con.
Yeah.
You call me aggressive? I've been doing this for 20-plus years.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well,
no respect.
Yeah.
And they're attacking us, and I'm not going to bring up names, John.
No.
Come on.
Look, the attacks are silly, but to me that shows the insecurity behind their beliefs. And then I'll move on to your U.S. Air Force question because I think that one's really important. But I will say this about, I guess they call them the young guns or something like that. They haven't contributed like anything to this field, and they're out there attacking people and this and that or whatever.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is people like you who've been around for 20 years have seen people and entities like TTSA a lot. Now, I'm not saying that they're just, some kind of shill organization that's lying and is some kind of scam. I'm not ready to go there yet. But the writing is on the wall that we're not getting the full story. The transparency claim can't be farther from the truth. And there are a lot of problems with the bottom line of the story. But to all of those who keep attacking people like you who have seen this before, and myself, I'm at 23 years myself, people that are like attacking like that don't understand that this is just history repeating itself. Isn't that like the fifth time I've said that in this broadcast? And history often repeats itself where we get people that make wild claims about UFOs and nothing has happened. I'll guarantee this. I don't wish this bad on them, meaning TTSA. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I have a lot of respect for Tom DeLonge. Not his claims, but his entrepreneurial background and what he's done and accomplished. He's very, very accomplished. I don't wish them bad. But I will guarantee if they do not last and TTSA goes under because the debt is just too much, I will be blamed. You watch. And it will like Greenewald got his way and down with TTSA, he said, and now they were down. I'm sorry, no, but they're setting that up. People are setting that up, and I'm seeing that more and more, all because I asked a couple questions and apparently brought down some big organization. So there's just weird stuff going on. And I don't like to use the C word of saying cultist, but again, going back to that, you can't go against the gospel according to TTSA or you're in trouble, So the people that should be spending that passion, taking that time to contribute to this whole debate, instead they're just throwing shots and slinging mud. And look, I'll defend myself. I got no problem admitting that some of my tweets, people don't like them. Well, you know what? I don't like getting attacked either. So we can blame my Italian blood, we can blame whatever you want, but I'm not going to sit there and have, a major mainstream editor start attacking me without evidence, without attacking any information that I've brought forward, saying that I'm not credible. No. It's just you don't like my information, and you could say that. You're entitled to it. But when you start attacking people's credibility and saying that I'm not getting anything and I'm trying to pretend to be a reporter and this and that, that's just a childish game. But let me move on because you have a great other question here.
Sure.
So for those who don't know, Kevin Randall, who is another podcast host, he's been around for a long time, author of numerous books, had me on his podcast just yesterday. It dropped. And we talked about this very issue, and I'll bring it up here. The question mark for your question number 2 was about the Air Force technology. Could the Nimitz et al., the gimbal, the Go Fast, and whatever else they're talking about, be different pieces of technology or other branches testing? It is not popular to say, but in my opinion, that is a big possibility. Simply because to the U.S. Navy, they are unidentified. However, that's the most powerful Navy in the world, backed by the strongest government in the world. So we're a very powerful nation. The United States Air Force, it would make perfect sense to test their advanced, highly classified technology against that very powerful branch without their knowledge. Without their knowledge, because that's the only true way that you're going to test your drone capabilities, your stealth technology. You're going to challenge the best pilots in the world. Can they engage it? Can they chase it? Can they figure out what it is? Can they look at the color? Whatever. All of these questions have to be asked. And I think it is a big possibility. Now, people hate me when I float this idea because they think I'm going against the brave men and women who fly in our skies that have come forward with a UFO story. And that can't be further from the truth. But just because they are highly trained and highly capable as a military pilot doesn't mean they know everything that's flying in our skies. Sorry, it's just the reality of it. And I mean, go back, 50, 60, 70 years when they started developing the flying wing. And I mean, the Nazis had designs for a flying wing. Fast forward through Jack Northrop finally seeing it fly to some highly trained people during that highly classified era. That was alien technology, I'm sure. That was a UFO. They couldn't identify it. Flying wings can't fly, according to some highly trained individuals. And yet here we are. And so it's not an insult against David Fravor or the Princeton crew that has come forward. It's not, but it makes sense. Here's a history repeating itself. Going back to the 1950s, the CIA took their highly classified spy satellite and took pictures of a highly classified installation that we know as Area 51. They took those photographs from that technology and gave it to the best analysts that they had. But they hid from them what they took pictures of. They had no idea what they were looking at in order to test them. So there is a long history of the U.S. military and the U.S. government and the intelligence community testing their own technology on their own people without their knowledge. So, not to go off on a tangent, but yeah, I talked to Kevin Randall about that on a podcast yesterday. I've talked about it. I don't remember if I've talked about it on this show before, but I think that it shouldn't be as unpopular as it is to entertain the possibility, because I think that the strong evidence that we have to support it, if that turns out to be true, is how quiet the United States Air Force has been. Those emails that I went over in the beginning of the broadcast, for those that missed it, I didn't go over this particular one, but you can look at what the Air Force was saying about the drones and unmanned aerial systems and this and that. They just don't want to touch this topic. But in those emails, it's also revealed that they are not seeing an increase in any type of technology, unmanned, unidentified, or otherwise, encroaching on their Air Force installations. So the question mark is...
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, John, like you said. It doesn't make sense. Why is the Air Force taking a back seat with flying saucers?
Well, okay, let me be a skeptic for a second. Maybe they are the pilots. Maybe they're the ones that are flying these UAPs that the Navy is seeing.
Agreed.
And so that's...
I think that's what's going on here, and that's what I'm being told behind the scenes.
It's a plausible theory. I mean, I always say this phrase, and I'll say it again. As an investigator, you have to entertain all possibilities. Doesn't make you a skeptic, doesn't make you a debunker, doesn't make you a jerk. It just makes you look at every possible scenario and either prove or disprove it. And I think that that's why some people get mad at me when it comes to this, because I will float that idea. I'm not afraid to float a skeptical idea just to dismiss it. And I found that Kevin Randall,
as much as I like Randall, I don't think he was prepared for the show yesterday. I don't think he had the knowledge up to the date like most of the people in your chat room do. I'm going to go because I want you to make sure you have the alien scientist on, because he is always fun to hear what he's doing and what he feels. But I will say this. You said you had trouble coming up with a list of people that you looked up to. Well, I bet that this chat room, John, would have a much easier time, and you, coming up with people that have sold out and done a disservice to ufology and the purity of the science this year. And I'm going to leave it at that. You're the most level-headed journalist in the field, and I thank you every day, sir.
I appreciate that, Jesse. You call anytime, man. Good to hear from you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I will take Jesse's real quick third question. For those of you who recall, he asked about is there kind of a black project, a CIA op, something going on here with TTSA. My friend over there at Dark Journalist also got a very popular live stream. In fact, I think he's live streaming tonight, so make sure you pop over and subscribe to my buddy Daniel Litzt over there and the Dark Journalist. He's obviously really into the idea that this is a CIA op. I'm not ready to go there yet. So I respect his point of view. I just don't necessarily agree with the notion yet. simply because I don't think the evidence is there. I don't hold it against them that a lot of their board members have CIA government background. I have a lot of respect for the government and military, even though I know that they cover up a lot of stuff, and I try and get all of the secrets that they have. All that being said, I don't hold that against TTSA. What I do hold them to is being truthful. I am surprised at the amount of missteps that they have. I'm not ready to say that they've all been malicious, meaning that they're trying to mislead us. However, I will say comfortably there's a big enough list now of blunders that make you start to wonder and question, is there a different intent here to mislead the public? A very quick list. On opening day of TTSA in October of 2017, they used a debunked UFO picture to represent the Tic Tac. It was a number 1 Mylar balloon. Number 2, in Italy, Luis Elizondo stood up in front of the world audience, pointed to a picture on his presentation, and he said, look at this. This is an actual photo from the 1952 UFO wave in Washington, D.C. There are no photos of Washington, D.C. Why I knew exactly what it was, I licensed that animation video for a television show that I had produced in my television career. I knew exactly what it was. He took a still frame of it, put it up there, and said that was a photograph. A mistake? All right, acceptable. I never brought that up until recently, because now you've got the third one I'll put in the list, and that was a picture of malachite, a earth mineral, a rock, that was in their press release for a metamaterial. So they used malachite to represent a metamaterial. We all know stock photos. We all use them. I use them on the Black Vault all the time. But when you do a scientific press release and you're talking about something this important, don't put a rock as your photograph. At least use a metal of some kind, for crying out loud. But they didn't. And so is there intent behind all of that to mislead? I don't know, but I'm starting to question that more. Not ready to go there, that it's a CIA op yet. I'm just not. But be that as it may, I think that we now have a long enough list of these blunders to go, okay, guys, if you really want to divorce the UFO community, they could have helped you out there pretty good with all 3 of those mistakes, and they would have squashed it if you floated it on your Twitter account before you went on to a world stage and said it, or sent out a press release to a global audience. People would have realized that you weren't sending out a metamaterial. So I think that all that kind of stuff has to be looked at. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, caller, to keep you on hold. Who's this?
Hey, this is Jeremy. I'm the alien scientist.
Hey, Jeremy, the alien scientist. You were just mentioned on here by my last caller. Did you know that?
Yes, I made a comment in the chat room there and said I was on the line waiting. So I'm really enjoying the show so far. You guys are bringing up some real good stuff, real good questions, and real good points.
I appreciate that, Jeremy. And let me ask you, for those who don't know who you are, I know you a little bit from Twitter, but give everyone a rundown of who you are. What do you do?
Well, I'm 37, and I've been doing this for about 15 years. While I was, first in college studying physics, I kind of got into physics from Richard Feynman and reading a lot of his books and stuff, and then got interested in UFOs and the science behind them from actually watching a lot of Bob Lazar stuff, growing up as a kid and back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And got real in depth in a lot of the research, started making videos on this stuff, and it's just you come full circle after 15 years of research, and then going through the process of getting a degree in physics, and in the process of doing all this, and trying to sort out the wheat from the chaff, and what is legitimate and what is not. And I don't know, it's kind of changed a lot of my perspectives on things over the years and stuff. And I'm very skeptical of TTSA. I have been from the start. I've been, saying a lot of stuff about them, and pointing out the connections between all these characters behind the scenes and the work that some of them have done together in the past, and how this whole community just at the top levels and the most popular scenes out there just seem to be really well connected, and mm-hmm. really a tight-knit collaboration of the same group of individuals. And if you are an outsider and you question them or debunk them, even as a truth seeker, not really, I would consider myself more of a truth seeker than a debunker. But you get shunned out of this community as a sort of a debunker type. If you go and speak out against them. I've
come to realize that. Let me ask you, On the comment that you made about a lot of people kind of being entwined, if I understood you correctly, a lot of people being entwined in kind of the same stuff over the years. I don't know how long you've been listening, but in the beginning of this, I went over some documents that I posted to the Black Vault, drew a connection between people that span decades that tied Eric Davis, Dr. Eric Davis, obviously connected to TTSA, to another guy going back 30 years that they're still working together. I mean, it's just crazy. Why do you think that there's these same names that just seem to pop up all the time in these highly controversial UFO related stories?
It's certainly interesting, and it begs the question of, is there some kind of hidden hand behind it all? But that's why lately I've been just really focusing on the real science and the real science questions. I've been going back and forth with Michael Schratt, who was on recently on Richard Dolan's show recently, talking about how, he thinks that this stuff was developed back in the 50s and stuff, and we've been kind of having a lot of debates over when exactly they figured what out and what they have, and when they figured what out and what they actually do have, if they have anything. And it's really a tough puzzle to go through, because all the stuff is so locked away in classified black programs that there's really no way to make sense of a lot of it. So what I've actually begun doing is compiling an archive of and I'm starting to collaborate with a bunch of researchers who are collaborators of mine who do similar research like this, to put an archive together of all the studies that have been done by the military and the government, academia, all the mainstream, like the major anti-gravity studies, propulsion studies, warp drive studies, anything related to this, and put together all the mainstream, real studies going back to the 50s. And then I want to go through a sort of, there's a lot of laboratories and a lot of professors in the academic community that have already done a lot of research in these, and have basically have done replications of virtually all these experiments, and have the equipment and laboratories on hand to perform replications of all these experiments. So we want to kind of get the collaborative together to go through, 70 plus years of all this anti-gravity research and figure out, did they figure it out? If any of that stuff works, then it would be a clear indication that, yeah, they figured it out here,
Yeah.
If we figure out which study, when. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. It also doesn't make a lot of sense that these studies continued through the 90s and are still continuing present day, as we see with, that warp drive study that was from, I believe, 2017, that was released among all those files with the ATIP stuff for the U.S. Air Force by Eric Davis.
Yeah.
And, it's stuff like that. If they found it, then why have they continued the research? Why has no one made trillions off this yet? I mean, if they found it back in the 50s, it doesn't make sense to me, because someone would have wouldn't have been able to resist the urge to make all that money off it and keep it secret and covered up for this long. You know what I mean?
I think there's something to be said to that, and on top of it, to get what essentially seem to be like repeated payments. I mean, that's an uncomfortable thing to start talking about, but it's like $22 million for OSAP to generate those 38 reports. I mean, of course, money's going to funnel elsewhere, but
I have 22 times that, and I worked on a budget of a 1/22nd of that. I've spent way less than $1 million, and I have 22 times that amount of papers on metamaterials, quasi-crystals, all even more in-depth stuff than stuff that they went into in those 38 papers. I was kind of looking at that. I was like, this is kind of validation of some of the things I've been studying. That's what I thought at first.
Yeah.
But the more I look into this, is it's almost like they've taken these common themes, which I've been promoting for a decade now within the UFO community. They've taken these scientific themes, found related papers on it, and put this collaborative together. It's almost like they put this Pentagon, Bigelow and Reed put this Pentagon study together with the money, just so they could research this kind of stuff, just so they could try to pry the lid off anything in case there was something there.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is actually anything there, but it looks like this private group of insiders created this group. At the best case scenario, if they're not working as a counter intel op, then it seems like they created this whole thing on purpose as a guise to try to pry the lid off disclosure, or start that process a little bit. You know what I mean?
I will say, even though I'm not a 100% believer in that kind of PSYOP, CIA op, different agenda kind of thing, I will play devil's advocate and say this: the one thing that they have achieved is that they've it's going to sound awful, but they've infiltrated the UFO community in a sense. They've acquired what is potentially the best evidence that the UFO community has. They've kind of swallowed it all up, again, operating off the assumption that these quote-unquote metamaterials may pan out to be something good, and they're giving it right back to the military. You know, I mean, to play devil's advocate on my own belief, it's like that really sounds like an objective, that they went out there and said, we're doing the UFO research, give us your best stuff. So the people with UFO fragments, they all flock to the money and they flock to the stardom. TTSA now acquired them. Some are on loan, but Tom DeLonge got $35,000 from his own company to sell something. So he's obviously owning it. And now they're taking that stuff and walking it right back into the military. That's like an awful scenario. Why would you even think that was good? And yet that's what they're doing. So, you know, I'm not afraid to play devil's advocate with my own belief, because that does really kind of support that theory.
Right, and another person pointed out, like, why did they send the materials to the Army where it's going to go into a black hole because of export control laws on technology, and why didn't they just give it to MIT or another like independent lab to do testing on it, you know, or multiple labs? Because now it's in the hands of the Army, and they're under all these. That just makes it seem more suspicious, like they want it to go into a black hole because they never had anything to begin with. But the thing is, regardless of what happens with that material, what it turns out to be, slag or whatever, is the fact that the science of metamaterials is fascinating. There is a rich literature there of real technologies and real applications that go into quantum computing, quantum computer optics, and even this warp drive skin coating stuff, if it's feasible. That's where it would be in some type of these exotic materials, and it's interesting, but I don't think they have all the pieces of the puzzle, as I've been seeing from the debates going on within, you know, the physics community, the top physics people weighing in on this from all sides. It doesn't seem like their group has all the pieces, but it seems like they're trying to put on a front to try to break down the floodgates.
And
it's undoubted.
That's what's confusing about it all is with this Army thing. I understand why, because on the surface it sounds okay. But to your MIT comment, if they really did have something, which maybe they do, I would think that there is a long list of people that would love to be attached to something that might secretly do a test just to make sure that TTSA's claims hold water. Do a test and go, wow, this really is something. Okay, I'll attach my name to that. Keeping it 100% in the private sector. And that, I just don't understand that they just ran out of options with all the connections that Dr. Hal Puthoff has, that Tom DeLonge can buy with his chump change in his pocket, that Dr. Eric Davis has. I mean, those guys obviously know a lot of people, and they ran out of resources, so they had to fall back on giving it to a military branch. I got nothing against the Army, but when we're talking about a topic like this, just doesn't make sense at all. But, you know, who am I?
It doesn't make sense, and it's interesting that, like, of all the classified studies that I've seen done, the Navy's done several that we have documented, the U.S. Air Force has several, but I'm having trouble coming up with anything that the U.S. Army's really done with regards to these technologies. So it's interesting why they would choose to partner with them.
Yeah,
all the military branches.
Well, I'm eager to see the outcome. I do have some Freedom of Information Act requests out there. Obviously, they haven't tested anything yet, so it's not like they're going to, you know, release results. But I am trying to get a little bit more information through FOIA on it. We'll kind of get a background of how TTSA is communicated with them, maybe. We'll see how that pans out. So there's a lot more to come on that topic, and I wish them the best. I hope there is something cool, but sadly, I don't know what it'll be. But I think it's decided, though.
Well, I followed all the scientific disclosures that have come out of TTSA so far. Everything scientific related they've released, and it's interesting that about 2 weeks before they announced that Army CRADA, they pulled down all their materials, like everything they've ever posted, all the stuff about metamaterials that Hal Puthoff presented at that the Society of Scientific Exploration Symposium with the Remote Viewing Society back in 2018. All that stuff like came down, and which I thought was interesting. But
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So you're saying they removed everything from the site on this, on the general topic?
I think it was done as part of the agreement that they told them, like, you know, you're bordering on some classified technologies or something, and we don't want too much information getting out about it.
Interesting.
That could be a possible explanation for it.
Yeah.
But but again, I'm trying to reach out to people and put together that. I posted the link already to the to my hoverbrothers.com site/theory, and we're putting together a whole like archive of all the studies that have been done. So I want people to go on there, check out the stuff that we have, download copies of it and backups in case it disappears, as this stuff tends to. And if you have anything that's not on the list that you want us to add or share, I still have stuff that I haven't put on there too. So, you please get in touch with me through the website, and let's help a community effort to kind of build a master archive of all the science stuff.
That's awesome.
Related to the tech.
Yeah, make sure that you write me privately, because I didn't see it in the chat, but I can't watch it that closely. But make sure you send me that, and I'll make sure to forward it out and put it in the show notes page for this. And we'll have to bring you back for kind of a full show and kind of dig a little bit deeper into what you're doing and what you found out. So hopefully you might be available to do that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We have a lab set up right now. We're getting investors. We're about to launch a kind of a television program, kind of like MythBusters. We're hoping to run through like all the experiments, and we're reaching out to a lot of like universities and academics, professors and stuff who have researched this stuff and have like their own research, and we got people that are like they're coming out of the closet, like all these other private groups and stuff that are saying, sharing stuff with us too. So it's pretty cool what's going on right now.
That's awesome.
Definitely like to get back on and share some.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, definitely write to me. Any contact form on the Black Vault comes directly to me, or my name, john@greenewald.com is my email. But yeah, any contact form, and we'll definitely set something up, and I'll make sure your link is out there in the show notes.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, and keep up the great work, John.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, a couple more questions here. We're going to have to start wrapping it up. It is Halloween. Happy Halloween to all of you who celebrate. Be safe tonight. I've got my 5-year-old Golden Power Ranger. He is ready to go out. Although it's still only 2 o'clock here, I go crazy with Halloween, and we are being pummeled by winds. So I need a little bit of time to get out there and fix all the decorations. I will post pictures for you. That being said, make sure that you subscribe to the Twitter account for the Black Vault, and also on Facebook you'll find the Black Vault. Subscribe to both. There's different content on both. I usually try and overlap. Sometimes I don't. It's not always feasible. So make sure you subscribe to both if you use both social networks. Okay, so a couple more questions here via text, and I'm going to start wrapping it up. So this one comes in. If you, I know I didn't say this. I'm going to say anonymous. If you always want your name out there, make sure you put it in the text. What kind of money are we talking TTSA members making from History Channel and their other ventures? My initial reaction was to believe their sincerity, as it was hard to reconcile some of their resumes with ufology as a career choice. Is there serious money on the line for these people, or are there other factors to explain their TTSA affiliation? There's not a whole lot of money in History Channel stuff. Discovery Channel, there's really not. Obviously, they were co-executive producers on it, so they probably made a little bit of change. But probably not enough to get out of, I'm not a financial guy, but obviously those debt numbers are pretty big on those SEC filings. I know some people argue, well, it's just they're giving away stock instead of payment. That's all fine, but it's debt nonetheless. So I don't think that they're going to make a living as a corporation doing History Channel shows. Was there a lot of money in this? If I understand your question correctly, my initial reaction was to believe their sincerity, as it was hard to reconcile some of their resumes with ufology as a career choice. If I'm understanding you correctly, you have to look at what they wanted to do versus what they did when it comes to the finances. They wanted to raise $50 million on that first offering. Those are big salaries as an outcome. Those are big paydays as an outcome. You're making big leaps and strides as a corporation with those types of dollar amounts. They didn't get it. So obviously we're judging them off of, well, they only made $1.5 million, so split that up between all of them, and they're all really wealthy, so why do they need that? Yeah, but remember, that's not what they wanted. They wanted something 50-ish times what they raised. That's what they wanted initially. So imagine if they got the $50 million. What type of salaries were they going to get? What type of kickbacks were they going to get? We know that Earth Tech International, which is Hal Puthoff's company, was paid for analysis for doing TTSA's analysis. He's a co-founder. So it's like money from the left is going into the right pocket. That may be fine and kosher. That's great. But again, it's keeping it in the family, so to speak. And so when you have $50 million to play with, you're talking about quite a few more dollars than what we're seeing now that went from the left pocket to the right pocket and so on. And they would have done a lot different. Now they're shifting gears. The UFO thing has kind of fallen in their SEC filings by the number of, by the order, the sequential order of what their aim is. The aerospace thing has been rejumbled. Tom DeLonge is tweeting out that they're not a UFO research organization, which is really bizarre because they invested in a UFO reporting app. Their first big TV show was UFOs. It just makes you scratch your head a little bit and go, come on, what's going on? So with the money, you just, to tackle that, and I don't have an answer for you, but to start to tackle it, you need to look at what they wanted to do versus what they did. And what they wanted to do was a heck of a lot more. Here's another question that came in. Any thoughts regarding Kevin Day and UAP expeditions? Obviously, Kevin Day, part of the part of the USS Princeton, obviously has a pretty amazing story to tell about the Tic Tac incident, is now doing an expedition out there. I don't pretend to know 100% of what they want to do on a scientific level. I will say what I do know about it. It's not really in my wheelhouse to say, oh my gosh, this has to be done. Quite possibly, maybe. But to me, it's not quite the correlation between UAPs, and I know they're getting into whale songs and stuff like that. It seems like they've got a lot of great people behind it. So I wish them all the best. Just not in my wheelhouse of something that I would, advocate for and say that was top of the list of what we had to do. But I do wish them all of the best because I'm not 100% knowledgeable on the scientific reasoning for what they're trying to do. Hi, John. What is your view on the legitimacy of the Wilson documents? Again, this is CJ from the UK texting again. CJ, thanks for still listening in. I appreciate that. The short of it on the Wilson documents, I talked a little bit about it with retired police lieutenant Tim McMillan on this program. You can see it on this channel. Make sure you click that subscribe button first, and then you could look at the archive videos. I even split off a shorter video of just him talking about the Wilson memos. I think he brings up some pretty good question marks about them on what they claim and what they are. I don't have really a thought either way. I scratch my head on, yet again, the same names coming up, tied to this. You look at the timing of when it came out, this and that. If I were to really have to put an answer on it, I don't think that the information within is legitimate. I'm sure the notes probably were crafted to have a reason behind it. I have a hard time believing the actual content within it. So yeah, I'm on the fence, leaning towards there just kind of nothing there. But I haven't dismissed him. I usually don't dismiss much of anything until an overwhelming amount of evidence comes around. So I invite you all to see Lieutenant McMillan's interpretation of that. See what you think about what his interpretation is and why his input is really valuable, by the way, for those who don't know. He's a freelance journalist now, writes on quite a few different topics, UFOs as well. But he did a huge expose on special access programs, or SAPs. I mean, the guy knows more about SAPs than anybody I know. And so he really used that knowledge on writing a heavily detailed article and used that knowledge to kind of look at the Wilson document to see, did it hold weight? Would these claims kind of hold up? And he definitely, in my opinion, was very skeptical about it based on that. So all of that, I think that is all of the text messages I have. The last one was an email that came in from Mike. What's with Snowden going on Roden seems crazy in the first place, and then saying no proof of aliens seemed like a government plant if given a plea deal to counter the recent admission of UAPs. Is this even plausible? So here's what I would say, Mike, and you're going to be the last question I deal with here. So I posted about Snowden not too long ago on Twitter when the headline came out about him saying that there was nothing about UFOs. Now, I would not bet money on this, but I proposed kind of a conspiracy theory about Snowden that, may ultimately tie into your question, Mike, and that was, I believe there's a strong possibility that Edward Snowden was essentially put up to leak what he did. And the reason I say that is because we ultimately didn't learn anything that new. The rumors about a system called Echelon have been going on for years. There was a great movie, Enemy of the State, that if you haven't seen it, watch it. But Enemy of the State was about this very topic, where when you're talking on a phone and you say, I'm even apprehensive to do it now, but when you say assassinate, and then you follow it by a word of a high up government leader, that triggers Echelon to go, okay, we have to go watch this YouTube broadcast. We got to listen in on this phone call. We got to intercept this cell phone communication, or we got to watch that text message. And so that was rumored for a long time. And this movie was made quite a few years ago, well before Snowden. So the idea behind all of this was nothing new. Domestic spying was nothing new. Now we, of course, had some names. We had some program names. But there was one big change after Snowden did what he did. If you believe the public story, he's in hiding, so that's a big change for him. But the other part was how the National Security Agency dealt with people like me, seeking answers to questions like Echelon through the Freedom of Information Act. And essentially what they did was just block all FOIA requests on anything that related to not only Echelon, but obviously PRISM and all these other new names that we had, but anything about domestic spying, telecommunications spying, stuff like that. And they would automatically give it a GLOMAR response. Where before, sometimes you get a GLOMAR, but other times, they would process the request. Now that's just a guess. But I think you can put up a case that they switched how they dealt with talking about that stuff and using the Freedom of Information Act GLOMAR response, which is, if you're not familiar, we can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of records pertaining to whatever you're requesting. So anything related to those Snowden leaks automatically GLOMAR'd. And that was it. And so that's why I think that there was motive for them to do this, to orchestrate Snowden going out there and leaking what he did. And so the question might be asked, well, why would the NSA put such a black eye on their agency? And the answer is simple. It'll go away. We don't really talk about it that much anymore. I guarantee the programs are probably still going on. You have the charade of politics and political leaders and congressional hearings and this and that. And the NSA gets a black eye, and people do rallies and they'll picket and whatever. But what happens? The NSA isn't going away. The politicians move on to something else. That black eye heals. And so they pretty much are scot-free. And so now all of that information is out there. The black eye is healed. And now they could just GLOMAR every FOIA request that comes in on anything that talks about it, that requests information, I should say, on that particular topic. So is that tall tale proof? Well, of course not. What I said on Twitter was, that's the fun of a conspiracy theory, when you have fun with them, that is, that you really can't prove it, but you can't disprove it either. And so, I mean, if this was really I would say like a Chelsea Manning type leak, where a lot of different types of material went out there. To me, that was a little bit different. With Snowden, I think you can put up a small argument that that there was a benefit to the NSA, because at the end of the day, that black eye goes away, and the NSA is not going anywhere. It's not like they're going to say, "You guys were spying on us. All right, disbanded." That's not going to happen. Not in the black budget world where they're getting billions of dollars that probably aren't accounted for. They take the black eye, put that stuff out there, change their ways. If all that's true, Snowden just became a hero to the NSA, not only because they leaked all of that stuff, but now he can be used. The general public believes pretty much anything Snowden would say. Why? Because he broke the rules, went against the fray. He carved against the grain. He said, look, this is all classified stuff. I am giving this to you. The media said, you're a hero. The general public said, you're a hero. So anything he says, what are you going to do? Question it. So playing with the conspiracy a little bit, now you can use them. Say, okay, what we need you to do is this UFO thing's getting a little bit out of hand. So just float out there. You look for info. You didn't find anything. So what's he do? That's exactly what he does. And so a lot of people go, well, if Snowden didn't find anything, maybe there's nothing there. Well, again, fun conspiracy playing around a little bit, but it makes sense. It makes sense that you don't overuse it, but you use that card when you have to, and it makes sense. So you have fun with conspiracies a little bit. I always do anyway, and have a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, you obviously need evidence, documentation, and irrefutable proof to prove anything you're trying to say. Sadly, a lot of places and organizations and people forget that. But here at the Black Vault, I have fun too. But at the end of the day, you need that evidence. So it is well past the time that I thought. I really appreciate all of your phone calls, all of the text messages, all of the emails. I'm happy to say, maybe I just haven't noticed it anymore, this is the biggest crowd watching live that I've seen. Obviously, 99% of the people subscribe to the audio podcast, which is where this dumps. If you do not know, I do have a podcast. You will see a lot of the live streams here, and then you'll get some extra content in the podcast, along with getting audio versions of videos just like this, where applicable. Sometimes it's not always dumped to a podcast, but this actually will be. That way you'll have the podcast. 99% of the viewership, listenership is that way. But man, I will say I'm excited to see a growing number of live stream watchers, especially because I have some really cruddy times for you guys, noon Pacific time on Halloween. So it's pretty exciting to see that. I'm going to try and work on better times, maybe towards the evening time. I know that that's a little bit more popular. But I am a dad. Daddy duty takes over. I have a beautiful 1-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And that reminds me, I got to get going to Halloween. So I really do appreciate that support. Thank you so much for making this, what I see, is the biggest online audience so far. Only about 6 to 8 weeks of doing live streams. That's pretty exciting as the numbers grow every time. So thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. And stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure that you watch out for some notifications on some really exciting episodes coming up. So when I can announce them, I will. I want to lock them down first before I start teasing you guys. But I guarantee it, you will be very interested in the content. So thank you all for listening again. This is John Greenewald Jr. signing off. We'll see you next time.